Hello, and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about my least favorite aspect of the game, and that is PvP. I'm going to showcase my arena teams. Some of my clanmates were asking me some questions about how to pick the right team for the right opponents and stuff like that, so I figured I'd turn it into a somewhat long form video for them and for others as well. Now, the focus of today's video is going to be on classic/tag team arena, so we're not really going to be addressing live arena because that's a whole different animal. However, if you're curious on my thoughts of that, I am in the beta, so I have been doing some live arena fights, testing it out, and it is definitely a cool feature and I do like it, but it can be very, very tricky with the amount of OP champions that a lot of other people have that I do not have. Partially being free to play, but partially just not being lucky enough to have all of the OP legendaries or void legendaries that are very, very arena focused and very, very good in arena. If you guys are more curious about some of my other thoughts about live arena as a whole, then I can make that in a separate video, so leave that in the comment section down below if you would like to see that one. So without further ado, here are my arena teams. Let's just pick a random team here just to showcase this. So first off, I do want to point out that I organize my teams in a way that is conducive to the area that I need the most varied champions the most, that being tag team arena. And so you can see that I have 4 of my tag team arena teams here at the top, and that just means that I can quickly select them, 1, 2, and 3 as needed depending on the team. My top 3 are my go-tos as far as quick fights, ones against the one-man defenses and whatnot that I fight midweek. But for stuff more on the middle of the week is where I start to manual more and pick a little bit more than these cookie cutter examples. But nonetheless, let's go through these different types of teams that I have to show for you guys here today. So tag team 1 is just a standard speed comp. We have an Arbiter speed booster. We have Cornelia, who's pretending to be a Kymar. So no buff strip, but just the AoE sleep. And so that works against most teams unless they have Stone Skin or immunity. We have Madame Saracen here, your standard arena debuffer. And we have a nuker. In my case, it's Foley. I like him because of the block revive, but that could be Trunda, could be Genbo, could be whoever else you have. Next, I have what I call alternate speed, which just means it's another speed team with a lot less quality champions. So I have Lady Kimmy, who's the fastest here. Genbo is the nuker, Deacon is the debuffer, and Jorg is there for increased attack. This, again, is primarily just for one-man defenses. This is not a primary tag team arena team because that just will not fly. I sit in gold 1 in tag team arena, and the teams are way better than this team here, so it rarely gets used, and this is mostly for week-to-week fights, just something quick that can kill the enemies in under 10 seconds. Next, we have tag team 3, which is my first rendition of a go second team, where I do have a Nekret protecting my Rhodos. I have Mathrala, who's great at not being debuffed, and I have a Volgoth to protect a little bit from AoE attacks. Under that, we have tag team 4, which is my second rendition of a go second team. And here we have a Kyoku in the lead, so she can spread increased defense with her passive when hit with a crit. We have Skytouch Shaman in here, who's our immunity cleanser, so she's in immunity and she can cleanse the entire team, put block debuffs, and revive on death. We have Mighty Uko, who has a little bit of the passive to try and steal some of those buffs when the enemy buffs, because again, this is go second, so they are going to go first and buff up. But he does also have the AoE buff removal and block buffs and decrease accuracy as well as the decrease attack on the A1. And then the win condition here is Stultus Dragonbane, who cannot be debuffed in the sense of he cannot have decreased defense or weaken placed on him with his passive, and so he's very useful as a go second nuker, and I have him as well. So that's it for the tag team arena focus compositions, and generally speaking in tag team arena I mix and match based off the cookie cutter teams to use here, but it depends on the enemies, and so you have to be flexible, and so I may not use these exactly as they are. I might use variations of these, but these are a good baseline for me to work from for most of what I need in tag team arena. Moving on, we have more of the classic arena-focused teams. However, they are all compatible with Tag Team Arena as well as needed. So we have my main arena team, which is pretty much the same as Tag Team 1, except instead of Foley, we have a Genbo, and that is primarily because there's still a lot of Swift Parry left in Classic Arena, and so Genbo can just ignore it as long as he's under increased attack, and so we can just slap through it and blast through teams in about 7 seconds. So this is my speed farming, gold medal farming team for Classic Arena. If I have a suspicion of some some Stone Skin lingering, if there's a Mortu Macabre or a Hefrak or an Ultimate Death Knight, something like that, then I might whip out my speed bomb team here, where I bring in, I still have the Arbiter, still have Cornelia, again, just a CC champion, in this case, just AoE sleep. We have a strip champion, and we have a bomb champion in Gaius. So Gaius and Rianne are pretty well speed tuned, within like 3-4 speed of each other, so they should go one after the other. And so we have a buff strip right before we land the bombs. If they're more of a scary team, I might use the go second variation, where instead of the Rhodos being protected by the Necrit, I have my Gaius protected by the Necrit. Obviously, this does not work if they have some sort of cleanser, or if they have some sort of block debuffs and they go first, so it won't work against a Duchess, for example. But if they don't have some sort of way to get rid of the bombs and I can just tank a hit, then this is the team that I would use. And this works particularly well against like a Mortu Macabre solo type team, where he's most likely in Stone Skin, and I can place bombs on the Stone Skin. In worst case, he tries to ignore the shield for Gaius, and he just kills Gaius, and Gaius kills him because of the bombs. So very, very effective for an anti-Mortu type composition. Because there are a lot of Mithrals, she is free to obtain for all players. So I do have a composition with Gaius that can also handle a Mithrala. And so I bring in Yoshi the Drunkard, who has the increased attack as well as the increased accuracy. And so that pushes my Gaius and Rianne to relatively high accuracy numbers, so that such that they can debuff and deal with a Mithrala even if she's in there, inflating her resistance. One of the more fun teams I do like to use is what I'm calling the Fast Tormund team, where I essentially just let Tormund freeze someone on the team, and then we let Dark Elhaine do her thing where her passive removes the freeze, and she just gets a free AoE nuke. And I also have Lydia in there, one, because she does have relatively high resistance, but also because she can block Tormund's passive. And so that team is particularly for when I intend to go first against a Tormund. Next, I have my second rendition of the bomb squad, and this is featuring Nishak Verminlord. So same thing, we still have Arbiter in the lead, but now we're using Lady Kimmy instead of Yoshi for the increased accuracy, a little bit of turn meter fill as well. And Gaius is also speed tuned with Rianne, so that he should go right after her. But this is a little more dangerous because Gaius has the ability to sleep on with the bombs, and so he is free from counterattacks and CC and stuff like that. But since Nishak has to take 2 turns, he is susceptible to like those counterattack accessories or just a random counterattack, and he's susceptible to some sort of passive CC or something else that an enemy champion might do. So it's a little bit more dangerous, but when I'm not too worried about what the enemy is going to do or a counterattack, or if they have a cleanser, then I can run Bomb Squad 2 and they can deal with particularly Stone Skin. Again, we have a lot of anti-Stone Skin type teams going on here. Just like the previous 2 Go Second teams, I do also have a Go Second Bomb variation with Nishak Verminlord, and that just depends, this is more for affinity basis. So if it's a solo Candy and Stone Skin, then this is the better team versus a Rhodos or a Gaius, just because they're magic affinity. And lastly, we have Anti-Freeze, which is another niche team, anti-Tormund specifically, but this is more for when I know I'm not going to go first, or they have a Hegemon and a Tormund together or something like that, or 2 Tormunds. And so Nekret is protecting Dark Elhaine here, and so most likely she's not going to get frozen, but ideally Vogoth or Lydia or Nekret even though they're built with relatively high resistance, but any of them will get frozen instead, and then we'll activate Dark Elhaine's passive and she'll be able to AoE nuke. And again, the same thing, we have a Lydia in here so she can deny the revival of the Tormund, and so it just speeds up the fight a little bit. So now let's see some of these teams in action. I'm not necessarily going to be able to use all of them as an example today, but it depends on the enemies as they pop up. But I'm going to try to showcase as many variations as possible. So let's start off here with the second team, and this looks like a decent candidate for the first team. Now here I suspect, this is a guess, but I'm guessing that the Pythian might be in Stone Skin, and so I could go with the bomb team, but they also have a Helicath here, and if I weak hit, for example, with Gaius, then Pythian could just cleanse and the bombs are gone, and that falls apart very fast. Or if I use Nishak Verminlord, then I could weak hit on the Helicath and he won't have bombs on him, and then he'll put block damage up. Same thing, the bombs will do 0 damage, and so that won't really work either. So instead, I'm going to run my standard speed team. The enemy's level 82 player level 82, so I expect that my Arbiter's faster, and then we're just going to block the revive on these 3, and hopefully we don't weak hit on Pythian, but even if we do, everyone else is dead, so we can just whittle him down. So a lot of the times I don't play Classic Arena on auto. It depends on the enemy team and how much overriding I feel like I need to do. But for a team like this, I think it's pretty par for the course. So speed up, we get the sleep, decrease defense, and everyone's dead. There we go. So quick fight, 6 seconds, and that is an example of the speed team. So underneath that, we do have a Hegemon team here. So this is a little bit on the scarier side. And so what I would prefer to do is if I wanted to like guaranteed victory, I could just run my Rotos team and he could pick them off easily and win the fight. But I want something a little bit more robust, probably a little bit faster. So I'd probably run a team like this, the Go Second Bomb team. So I should be able to tank their first couple of hits, even with the F2P Blood Twin in there and the Hegemon. And I'm immune to debuffs because Necret in here is protecting it, as well as Mithrala being immune from immunity. And so I should be able to just come in here, cut in, barely any damage from the guy there, an F2P Blood Twin, and basically we just wait until they all slowly die to all the bombs that are placed on them. So I could control this a bit more and just make sure that I pop the guy's A3 on the Arbiter in case he's in Swift Pair or something like that, but I'm fairly confident that they were just going to take that team out. So 25 seconds, again, relatively fast. And again, I don't always full auto, but some of the teams I just know how they're most likely going to be, and so I'm not too worried. So underneath that, we have a team that I would normally avoid. Now, just looking at the team comp by itself, my first and automatic thought would, of course, be the second bomb variation here. We got a bunch of Force Champions and Mithrala. We're going to have increased accuracy, which is going to be enough, and I could definitely destroy them. However, the risk here is Polymorph. We got 3-star on Pythion and 1-star on Mithrala, and so that I could very, very quickly and easily just lose right off rip because of Nisha getting polymorphed by placing the bombs. And then aside from that, there's also the risk of counterattack accessories. So if Ultimate Death Knight, who's guaranteed to be in Stone Skin, by the way, if he counterattacks, he might land a Provoke, which means that my Nisha can't decrease the duration of the bombs, and thus it will be cleansed by Pythion and or Mithrala. And then we also have Stultus, who if he counterattacks, he's just going to kill Nishak because he's not built to take a hit. So we're going to risk it for the biscuit for the video, but normally I would avoid a team like this just because literally every champion with bad RNG, I could just quickly lose this fight. We still might anyways. So looks like we got 3 Stone Skins. Removed a couple of them. And did we get lucky? We got lucky. No polymorphs and no counterattacks. So that is a fat GG. So there's no Swift Parry because 3 of them were in Stone Skin. UDK is going to die, and Stultus is going to die whenever he gets his turn. So there we go. We got extremely lucky there. I honestly thought we were going to lose that. But that's an example of not getting the bad RNG, and that is how the second bomb team can definitely take down a team like that. Even as scary, as tanky as they are, just the power of bombs against Stone Skin and the power of Nishak Verminlord. So hopefully you guys did his fusion. He was a very, very good, amazing champion. So next up, we have a candy team, a speed team, pretty standard speed team, which is quite scary. But in this case, I might want to try out our second Go Second team here. Let's see how this does. I'm going to take this one off auto because Candy might just kill everyone on the first go. I don't really know how this is going to go. But if he doesn't kill everyone, then we have a chance to retaliate and do a little bit of work. So I'm not really afraid of the Madame Ceres too much, and the win condition here is a little bit of luck from reaction. There we go. We survived the hit barely. Uko almost died, but we get the full cleanse here from Skytouch Shaman. And then we have Kyoko here, gosh, who can give a little bit of decreased attack as well as some ally protection. So I don't really care if that happened. We have Revive on Death, so he gets picked right back up. Stultus can just go in with the AoE. Reviver is down, and the Nuker is down. So that's already GG. Skytouch is going to keep healing us up, and it's just a solo Madame Ceres who will slowly fall. I can actually just put this on auto. But we have a solo Madame Ceres who cannot do anything. So a little bit lucky on Uko surviving, but the main win condition here is Stultus, who has a little bit of reaction going on, as well as he cannot be debuffed by the Madame Ceres, so he cannot have decreased defense. So you'd have to be able to kill him at full HP with a full hit. And the candy was also notably not under a veil because we did not go first, and so he's not getting the 40% damage bonus as well. So a couple things landed in our favor in that one, but just an example of how a Go Second team with this kind of structure can work. So this next one here is kind of interesting. I could run the same Nishak-based bomb team, and again, we know the Ultimate Death Knight is in Stone Skin for sure, but I don't trust him to not counterattack in this case, and everyone else is Void, and so we're actually going to run the primary bomb team here. And I know I'm going to be faster because they don't have a speed aura. And, you know, some of these teams might be relatively easier than they need to be. But for just to show it, you know, it is what it is. Sometimes you're going to find the easy fights in Arena. Sometimes you're going to find the hard fights. And so just because it's easy doesn't mean I'm not going to showcase it. Oh, UDK is actually not in Stone Skin. What is this guy doing? But, yeah, we have Gaius there. Weak hit, as expected, on the UDK. Almost killed Gaius, which would have been better, actually. But, yeah. So take a little bit of time here, and it's going to be a bit longer. There's the Gaius A3, which can ignore unkillable. So this is going to be the long part of the fight. He might kill Gaius there, yep. Oh, he killed him, but he procced a bomb with his passive. And so that actually did a lot of damage to the UDK. So hopefully we can kind of finish him off here. Maybe we get another chance and guys can weak hit again, place some more bombs, or fail to place some bombs. I have no faith, by the way, side note. I have absolutely no faith in my inability to weak hit. Oof. Yep, there we go. Weak hit again. Hashtag negative affinity. But yeah, so he hit us. We got some bombs placed with the passive, and eventually we'll take him down. So I usually don't like to do this where I run positive affinity against negative affinity. Just because stuff like that, it might just take longer. But worst case, UDK just keeps killing Gaius. Eventually the passive is going to proc, and eventually he's going to put bombs on himself. Or we just don't weak hit, and eventually we place the bombs and he dies anyway. So relatively secure fight. Now this team here obviously is a free win, so it doesn't really matter what I use, but I'll take this opportunity to show just the main arena team and how quick it can be. 7-second farm. So I got the speed boost, the sleep, the debuff, Genbo buffs himself and kills them all. 7 seconds. There you go. So when you get teams like that, you know, have a team that's relatively quick. You don't want to spend forever in these fights, especially if they're a gimme like that one. So I'm actually going to skip this team for now, and we're going to jump down to this guy, level 78. So I expect them to not be super fast. There could be some Stone Skin in the mix, but I'm going to take the chance and use the same team here and just see if we can wipe them out in one shot. So no Stone Skin, debuff with Madam, and looks like a pretty clean, yep, no reaction either. So even a team that looks scary, sometimes if you have enough firepower and you're going first, it just doesn't matter. Speed team can work. So for the last team here, I'm going to use my first go second team only because there is an Umbral Enchantress. So I want to show an example of what you can do when there happens to be some sort of unkillable champion and you have a champion that can ignore unkillable. Now this team is going to be relatively longer, so we're going to take it slow and take it manual. So I have my Mithrala relatively fast for purposes like this, where they have a CC champion but no second speed booster. So I'm fairly confident that the Genbo is not 260 or something speed to be speed tuned with the rest of them. So Mithrala can just come in, cleanse all that off. We don't have any debuffs. That's not going to hurt at all because we have a shield set and a bolster set. Now we can come in, ignore the unkillable. If that could have been a Leo or someone like that, we can come in and try and kill the Arbiter. There we go. She's dead. So when conditions are gone, Nekret happens to have an ally attack, so we can just kill Genbo, and it's basically GG from here. Ooh, petrified herself. That's unfortunate. That just means she didn't die. That literally prolonged this fight. So that's one of the downsides I have to say of petrification, is that like they take so little damage that sometimes you can't finish them off like the way you want to. But there you go. Minute long fight, so that took a little bit longer, especially because they had to go through all of their abilities first. But just shows you that, you know, if you have a pretty robust go second team, and obviously Nekret is very, very powerful, so it's not going to work for everyone. Everyone won't have them. But champions like that, you can definitely protect someone. And even if you have some sort of unkillable, if you have a way to ignore it, in my case, I have Rhodos, but I also have Genbo. If he has increased attack, which Mithrala can provide, he has increased attack, then he can ignore unkillable. So stuff like Leos and Skull Crowns you can still deal with, even in a go second format. So just as an aside here, I've refreshed the page, and I just want to show that sometimes because the primary purpose of Classic Arena, regardless of what player might want, is to farm your Great Hall, to get the medals, to level up your Great Hall, right? And so I honestly don't take fights that I know I can't win, or I don't know if I can win. So like Team 1 here, I'm not worried. I would just kind of blast them down. Team 3, not worried. This team, not worried. This team, I'm probably faster than them, but more likely than not, I'm not even going to risk it. This team is doable, but it's slow and quite annoying. There's a UDK, so I can't bring a Rotos to deal with the Leo. There's a Mortu Macabre in there, and all this, and a Python's going to keep reviving them. It's annoying. I don't want to deal with it, and so I would skip that team too. Cardinal team, very, very easy to bomb if you have some sort of bomb champion, so don't be afraid of Cardinals if you have some way to bomb, because you can just bypass the Stone Skin. Here, Speed team, I don't know if I'm faster. Double Trunda is a little bit scary, so I probably wouldn't deal with that either. And Yumiko Candy Trunda, no thanks, right? So you can pick and choose your enemies. It's Classic Arena. You don't have to always go for anything. You don't have to, I mean, if you want to just see the tested limits of your or go second team or something like that, go for it. But just pick easier fights if you can. So I'd pick these, these 3 from this page, and I just wait. So some of you might not have enough time necessarily to play like that. And, if you're forced to fight most teams on the page, then best of luck. But if you can, just wait it out, refresh for free every 15 minutes, or use gems if you really, really have to. If you're desperate, not recommended, but if you need to, go ahead and do it. But just refresh, get some easier teams, or until you get some easier teams, fight those, and just wait for the next page. So that's what I like to do, and that's how I've farmed basically all of my gold medals. Now, in the case where there's some sort of Classic Arena tournament, I might try a little bit harder. So if I was, if it's down to the last few hours or the last few minutes of a Classic Arena tournament, then I'm in second place and I'm trying to climb and I don't want to waste a bunch of gems refreshing, then it's like, okay, I might try this team with one of my go second teams with a Necret in there or something else, just because most likely they might survive. I would deal with this team. It'd be slow, like I said, it'd be slow, but I would deal with this team and try to, take them out. I'd face the Cardinal team. And so you can open it up a little bit more as you need, particularly if you're chasing Classic Arena tournaments, which are very, very good for snagging some Relentless Gear, depending on how hard people go. But yeah, up to you guys. But that's how I typically like to approach fights on each page. So as promised, I'm going to share with you some of the champions that I've used and the builds that I have on them for my arena teams. So my Necret the Great is in a shield set and immortal with 1 reaction piece on, so there's a 25% chance he can block a crit. He's built really tanky, high HP, high defense, mediocre speed, I would say, just in the middle of the road, and relatively high resistance. Now, Necret, very, very strong in Stone Skin. I don't like using Stone Skin. It's my least favorite set in the entire game, but he's very popular in Stone Skin. He's also good in protection, and a shield set works if all else fails. Next, we have Rotos, who, as you'd guess, is in a Savage set here. No reaction, unfortunately. A little bit low on the HP. I wish that was a little bit higher, but 6k on the attack, partially due to the 2-star blessing that I have on him, Lightning Cage, which is really optimal for pairing with a Necret, by the way. Relatively fast at 210. I do want him to take multiple turns. I don't want him to be 140, 150, which is more modern day meta as far as Stone Skin is concerned. So I want him faster so he can take a lot of turns and kill a lot of people, and about 230 on the crit damage. Frequenters of the channel have seen my Mithrala build many, many, many times, but I do have her in an Untouchable and Perception set with double reaction, so 50% chance to not be crit on the first hit or before her first turn. So again, built relatively tanky, high HP, high defense, high speed, and high accuracy, because the accuracy gets converted to resistance. So she's effectively about 775 resistance at the moment. Next, I have my Vogoth, who I used to have in a curing set, but I rebuilt him into a bolster set, which again works very well with the shield set from Necret, and so that's why they're paired together, and I get the larger permanent or irremovable shield. So he is built maximum HP, as much HP as humanly possible, a little bit of defense, relatively low speed, doesn't matter if he takes a bunch of turns, he's really there to just soak up damage, and the provoke that he might land here and there with 230 accuracy is a bonus. A little bit on resistance as well, because I don't necessarily want him to get debuffed and smacked into the ground immediately all the time. So usually happens anyways, but if he can resist some things here and there, it's kind of nice. Next, we have my Arbiter, who's, as you'd suspect, is in triple speed. Speed. That's all she needs. So her speed is 350. That's about as fast as I can get her at the moment. A little decent on the survival stats, but again, the primary job for her is to go first, ideally, and go fast. So 350 on the speed. Next up, I have my primary Madame Saris. I do have two. The second one is in immunity, but this one is in a triple perception set. And again, hyper focused on one stat, that being accuracy. So some survivability, a little bit of defense, a little bit of HP, decent amount of speed. She's speed tuned with my Genbo, who we'll see in a second, but 775 or 774 on the accuracy. So she is built to do one thing, and that's strip buffs. So very dangerous now in the polymorph meta, as we didn't see today with the Nishak team, but it can be very dangerous, and she's very susceptible to polymorph. However, in order to combat that a little bit, that's why I opted for the Chainbreaker blessing here. It won't break polymorph, unfortunately, but it can break some of the other CCs, petrification, stuns, and stuff. So she might be able to shake it off and still do some more damage with her abilities. Next to her, I do have my Cornelia, who again is my proxy for a Kymar in a triple perception set. She's similar to Madame Saris, but there's a little more focus on speed and less so on accuracy. So again, relatively tanky stats, high defense, high HP, 286 on the speed, so very, very fast, and then 617 on the accuracy. So think of her as a Kymar if I had one. Next up, we have my Arena Genbo here, who's in a Cruel and a Speed set. If I had a good enough Savage gear to go on him, I'd throw that on as well. But he is, we're not focused on tankiness, right? He's a nuker, so 5.5k on the attack, 228 speed, and literally 1 speed below Madame Saris. So that is, again, precise speed tune, so that they go one after the other. She strips and he nukes. So I don't need full crit rate because he gives crit rate or increased crit rate to himself. So 85 is a little bit over the 70, but it's just where it fell out with the gear piece he has on, and 265 on the crit damage. And again, we're allowed to ramp up the crit damage because he does not need full crit rate. So we're allowed to get focus more with stats on crit damage. Next, we have my Arena Gaius here in triple perception. Again, perception, if you haven't noticed already, perception is a very, very useful set in the arena even for DPS champions, or particularly for bomb champions, but very useful. So don't sleep on your perception, guys. Do your faction wars, get as much perception as you can, because at the very least, it's a very, very nice filler set. But once you can optimize it on certain champions, it's extremely, extremely powerful. So for Gaius here, we have him maxed out 7,000 attack, and that is with a 2-star blessing, 254 speed, relatively precise, as we'll see with Rianne, who he's speed tuned with, and then 600 on the accuracy. So Rianne here is in speed with perception. Again, a little more focus on speed, a little less so on the accuracy, but similar to Cornelia, relatively tanky, high HP, high defense, high speed, a few speed faster than Gaius, and then 600 again on the accuracy. Seeing a trend here of my target being around 600 accuracy if I can get away with it. Next up, we do have my Stultus Dragonbane, who's also in a Savage set, one piece of reaction gear. Relatively high defense, 5.2k, 190 speed, so kind of slow, but fast enough to kind of get the job done, and then upwards of 250 on the crit damage. Now, next here we have Mighty Uko, who's really more optimized for Hydra Clan Boss, and that's why he's in a Relentless set. So don't think of that as what it would be meta for Arena. I think he's way more popular nowadays in a stun set. So if you have a really good high accuracy, high speed stun set, then I would opt to put him in that. But again, this is for Hydra Clan Boss. Nonetheless, the stats are what you might want to be aiming for if you were to use a different set. So again, he's a support, so relatively high HP, relatively high defense, high speed, and relatively high accuracy, regardless of the set. Next up, we have Kyoku here, who I put in a Guardian set and a Perception set, so a little bit of accuracy, but mostly resistance focus. And again, she is a absolute tank, so high HP, high defense, decent amount of speed. I do want her to get a turn eventually, and a mix of resistance and accuracy with more bias towards resistance. In this case, the Guardian set is so that she can, one, just take some damage while she's under block damage, and also just keep people alive with some of her masteries. I think I have Bulwark on her. Let's see. Or no, let me look at it this way. Yeah, so I have Bulwark on her, so she can just take some damage from other people, particularly when she's under block damage, and that damage she's taking is 0. So very, very powerful passive on a Kyoku, very, very powerful champion. Next up, we do have Skytouch Shaman, who, as I mentioned earlier, is in an immunity set or untouchable with some speed. So she is built one-piece reaction as well. And she's built really fast, 273, high HP, because the healing she does with the passive is proportional to HP. And then as much resistance as I can get on her, so 540. Next, we have Nishak Vermilord, who is just like Gaius, is in a triple perception set. and we have almost 6.5k attack on him, 251 on the speed, and 630 on the accuracy. This build is primarily for arena, but it also happens to work on the one-shot Bommel comp, so he's also useful there. Next, we have my Lady Kimmy, who's in a mix of speed and perception, and for her, I was opting more for a speed bias than an accuracy bias. One, because she also gives increased accuracy to herself and allies, so she doesn't need as much accuracy necessarily. But 310 on the speed, support, so again, high HP, high defense, and then 432, as much accuracy as I can get. But again, the focus here is getting her speed relatively high. And lastly, we have Mr. Block Revive himself, Foley, who's in a lethal set, one of the few champions I've actually managed to get in a lethal set. But on him, total stats, we have 5.8k on the attack, 185, so relatively slow, and 242 on the crit damage. So that was everyone on my primary teams, but I do want to mention a couple of honorable mentions who can also do dual purpose in arena as well, even though they're primary built for PvE. So first off, we do have my Demon Lord Clan Boss Lydia, who obviously she has the passive to block revive, but also can provide decreased defense and weaken. So very useful in arena if you have a specific or arena specific build for her, that can work very well. My Python is built for PvE in a regen set, but he's very, very popular in Stone Skin or Immunity nowadays, and so he's a very solid arena champion as well. Basher, who's basically the budget, the budget warlord or Yumiko, so he can do a little bit of a lockout. And I have mine in a refresh banner actually, which is kind of nice. Sometimes you can back-to-back lockout, but you know, speed and accuracy bias, just like you were building a Yumiko or a warlord. I have some auxiliary nukers as well. I have a Skull Crown here in immunity, so if I want to go against a Torment or Hegemon team and I know I'm going to get hit and I'm not too worried about not dealing maximum damage, then I can run a Skull Crown there. I have my Dark Elhaine, who's in Savage, and again, she's for the anti-Torment type teams. I do have a Magnar who's in Savage if I want to use a more tanky DPS for a particular fight. Fanax is also in Savage if I really want to block revive on people, pick them off one by one. Just like that team with the Mortu and the UDK, it's like I can kind of just wait until they've ran out of a Stone Skin and then just go in with Fanax, starts popping them one by one. And then I also have Morrigan, a previous fusion, who's kind of in work, but decently quick, 271 and 383 in the accuracy. So kind of a Lady Kimmy type champion or a speed booster who does other things as well. So you want a mix of speed and accuracy. I also have my Yoshi the Drunkard, who we saw, who's just kind of like Arbiter, just in a bunch of speed pieces. Doesn't really matter what the accuracy is. I did get him to 311, but it's not really important. I just wanted him as fast as possible. Well, as fast as possible, but faster than Rian is really the most important part, or faster than Rian and Gaius. So 285 is just kind of where he falls out. I do also have a Roshkard the Tower, who I have in a 4-piece, hopefully eventually 6-piece protection set, and he's, you know, high HP, high resistance, and he's primarily used when I'm going against a Candy team, and so I just want to tank his AoE hit and then go in with a Fanax or something and just block revive or kill him with some other thing. So he's a sub in. Madame Ceres 2, as I mentioned, is an immunity set for if I have to deal with a Hegemon or a Tormund, but I don't really use her that much, and so she's just kind of on the back burner until later. I have my Ramantu here, who I did not use today because he's not fully built yet. I also want him in immunity as well, just like the Madame Ceres. I just don't have the gear to make that happen just yet, but I throw some gear on him for when I use him in Doom Tower, so he has middle of the road stats at the moment. And lastly, we have a couple of back burner projects. I have my second Rotos, who's in a Savage and Cruel set, who I'm kind of working on as things come along, and I have my third bomb champion in a double Perception and Cruel set of Lord Chazar, who's coming along relatively nicely. Not exactly where I want him to be stat-wise, but good enough to kind of move him up the queue. So just having a bomber for each affinity is kind of useful. So that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. This is not necessarily meant to be a guide of how to conquer the arena, but more just a showcase of the teams that I like to use and the strategies I like to employ to be able to make sure I can get as many gold medals as possible and get my Great Hall maxed as soon as possible. So with that in mind, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.